Hello and welcome to Time About the Movies Flashback. We're covering 2 weekends this time around, December 5th, 1986 and November 26th, 1986, because December 5th only has one movie to talk about, and then of course November has a couple movies to talk about, so we have a lot of films to get to here, so let's get right to it. And I'd start off with the big release of December 5th, 1986, Clint Eastwood's latest film, Heartbreak Ridge.
Clint Eastwood is Sergeant Tom Gunny Highway, Congressional Medal of Honor winner. Over 30 years in the Marine Corps. His scars run deep. And his battles never end. Clint Eastwood, Heartbreak Ridge, rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
With dialogue that certainly is more dignified than what would be later seen in the ABC promos about 7 years later.
I want those men in shape.
Clint Eastwood is looking for a few good men.
My weapons jam.
We found these guys instead.
This cat, he's nuts.
Clint Eastwood and Marsha Mason, Heartbreak Ridge next Sunday.
Why does the one soldier sound like Mort from Family Guy? My weapon's jammed. I got a splinter. Hey, Peter. More from Family Guy, but I digress. That's one of those commercials I found later on down the road that I couldn't help but laugh at when they got to the part where the guy's just like, my weapon's jammed. Like, is that really the best take you could do for that? I mean, seriously? But anyway, back to the movie. Heartbreak Ridge. The story centers on a U.S. Marine heading into retirement who gets a platoon of undisciplined Marines into shape and leads them during the American invasion of Grenada in 1983. Now, this is an interesting Clint Eastwood movie in the fact that it wasn't the biggest hit. It was a hit overall, but since then, it's kind of got lost between the shuffle because in 1986, you have two movies that are very similar to it, Top Gun and also Platoon. I mean, those two are much better movies in general, but this one isn't a bad movie per se. It's one of Clint Eastwood's more... I would say it's one of his more underrated movies overall. It's a film where he really works overall in this. Good cast that includes Marsha Mason. You see a young Mario Van Peebles in there. The story is very compelling overall. It is a film that I don't think gets as much attention as Clint Eastwood's usual films do, but it is a movie that I think is definitely one of his more underappreciated movies. It's a good war film. It's a good film that kind of gives you the indication of how the movies of the late 80s are going to go in terms of how you handle war and all that type of stuff. It's a very well-done movie. It's a well-done film that I don't think gets the proper attention it deserves as an overall Clint Eastwood classic, but it's a good movie overall, one worth checking out. So that's the big new release for December of 1986. Let's get to easily the biggest and probably the best overall release of the entire show, and that is Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home.
On the edge of destruction. We cannot survive unless a way can be found to respond to the probe. The key to saving the future. Spock, you're talking about the end of every life on Earth. Can be found only in the past. We're going to attempt time travel. Sigil, take us home. These are the voyages of the crew of the Starship Enterprise.
Judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived at the latter half of the 20th century.
Stardate 1986.
San Francisco.
Our own world is waiting for us to save it. They have 24 hours.
Everybody remember where we parked.
Break up to complete their mission.
You look like a cadet review.
We will beam in tonight, collect the photons, and beam out.
I want you all to be very careful without being discovered.
We have an intruder.
All right, who are you?
You're not exactly catching us at our best. That much is certain.
This is an extremely primitive and paranoid culture.
This is the exact change.
Many of their customs will doubtless take us by surprise.
We're ready for beam out. My transporter power is down to minimum. I've got to bring you one at a time. You're from outer space.
Oh, I'm from my own. I only work in outer space. Let's do our job and get out of here.
Take off, can you hear me?
Stop, it's the 23rd century.
Full power now, sir. Shields at maximum. Steady. Hold on tight, lassie. Can we make breakaway speed?
Boy, they certainly crammed in a lot of the plot of the movie in that trailer. I mean, it's a great trailer, but man, they put in a ton of stuff from the movie, including the climax of the film. But, hey, it worked. It worked because this film not only went on to become a massive hit, it ended up becoming the highest-grossing Star Trek film for the longest time up until the J.J. Abrams movies came out. And it's largely considered one of the best sequels overall. And you have a story that continues the story arc that began in Star Trek II and continued in the search for Spock, where you have the crew returning home to Earth to face trial for their actions from the previous film, and the former crew of the USS Enterprise finds the planet in great danger from an alien probe attempting to contact non-existent humpback whales. So the crew has to travel back to then modern day, which was 1986, San Francisco, and they travel to Earth past to find whales who can answer the probe's call. And they come across a lot of crazy fish-out-of-water adventures here. It's typically a fish-out-of-water Star Trek adventure overall, and not completely out of the norm for the TV series that did this a couple of times. Actually, one of the more interesting things about this movie was the way it was getting released, because it was in the middle of this 19-week period where Paramount Pictures almost had the #1 movie every single weekend from September of 1986 all the way into the new year in 1987, because you had Top Gun in its 19th weekend as the top-grossing film of the year, and then Crocodile Dundee comes out, and that was #1 at the box office for 8 weeks, and then all of a sudden Star Trek comes around for 2 weeks over Thanksgiving weekend as the #1 film. The Golden Child becomes #1 for 5 weeks, and then even something like Critical Condition was #1 for 2 weeks before the streak ended with Orion Pictures' Platoon. I mean, that's a 19-week period where you had Paramount leading the box office nearly every single week. It's a pretty staggering feat. I don't think we've ever seen a studio even come close to that. Maybe Disney sometimes, but Paramount had the #1 movie for 19 consecutive weeks. I always found that very fascinating, but that's just an interesting little tidbit I found on that. But as far as the film itself goes, I mean, Leonard Nimoy got more creative freedom to do what he wanted with this after what he did with The Search for Spock when he was the director of that movie. And he was able to make the movie come off as more of a film not just for the Star Trek fans, but also for the general public overall. And in a way, it's funny because when I talked about Search for Spock on the website, I mentioned that this was the only Star Trek film that had a continuing storyline, which turned out not to be true, as the storyline was basically set up in Wrath of Khan. Starts off how the Kirk and the crew were in court for the events that transpired in the last film. So yeah, I completely flubbed that one up in general. But is this one of the better movies in the series? I think it absolutely is. The idea of having the crew traveling back to a modern time period of 1986 is an intriguing premise that makes for a lot of genuinely funny and exciting situations all around. I mean, the whole idea of time travel is, for the first time, it's an idea that they make it seem like it's never been done before, even though there's been many TV shows and movies before Star Trek did this, where they've actually managed to put time travel together. It's just like, I never understood why time travel is always something where it's just like, we're going to attempt time travel. Like, it's something that they haven't done before. It's just like, what the hell? I mean, what the hell? You guys have been doing this so many times in the past, but I digress. The premise works overall. The idea of the crew interacting to the period of the 80s is very fun. Leads to a lot of good, funny, and clever moments, like the bit in the trailer where Spock is just, Kirk is just like, spread out. You guys look like a cadet review, and then Spock and Kirk getting on the bus, and Spock's just like, what does exact change mean? Like, little things like that are very well done. And I also like how the film kind of manages the environmental message of the movie pretty well. It doesn't have a villain in here. It does have a lot more interesting elements to it that would have been wasted if they had developed a villain in here. But the visuals overall are impressive. That shot of the Enterprise going over the bridge still stands after all these years. I mean, it's been, 40 years since this movie's come out. And that scene in particular still looks pretty impressive, even by today's standards. I mean, there's nothing more I can say about the film that hasn't already been said already. It's a really good movie. It's a film that not only managed to entertain the Star Trek fans, but general audiences in general. A good, fun action adventure, good story, good comedy, good action, good visuals. Just plain good fun. And then, it seemed like Star Trek was heading in the right direction in terms of its films. And then, of course, Star Trek V came out. We kind of touched on that already in the early years of the show. So, of the original time about the movie. So, if you want to go check that out there. Link in the corner. Let's get to the other movies that faced up against Star Trek IV, that most of them were not memorable whatsoever. Here's Deadtime Stories.
Wherever you hide, they will find you. Wherever you run, there is no escape. These are are the creatures of darkness, entering your nightmares. And they're all coming to life in a tale of terror. Deadtime Stories. Rated R.
Starts Friday at a theater near you.
Future Academy Award winner Melissa Leo. But, yeah, this is another one of these horror anthology films a la Creepshow and Tales from the Dark Side that has a couple stories. The babysitting uncle Note tells his nephews 3 stories. The first is a story about a slave used by 2 witches who are attempting to resurrect their sister. The second is based on Little Red Riding Hood, where a teenage girl mistakenly picks up a werewolf's medicine for her grandmother. The third story, based on Goldilocks, tells about 3 escaped mental patients who share their hideaway with a murderess. And yeah, it's that type of a movie. It's the type of film that was made perfect for the video stores and, the video nasty era. But with all that said, it still looks very impressive. The practical effects look pretty cool. Yeah, the scares are definitely there. It's definitely a movie where it's not my type of a film because I'm not much of a horror movie person, but anybody who wants to see a film like this and really loves these type of horror films, you're going to get your money's worth. There's no question about it, especially if you grew up around this time period. Not much more to really say about it, man. I mean, it's a movie that is what it is, so take that for what you will. Here's a movie that some of my people might take as it is, or someone like me who goes like, what the hell did I just watch? Solarbabies.
Bodai.
What is it?
He's a who, not an it. Then who is it? Do you like air?
It's not alive.
Do you breathe?
Where do you come from?
Earth, 1,000 years in the future. Out of the heavens comes a mystical and powerful force. It is called Bodai.
We're gonna get Bodai.
Yes, we are. It's unanimous. Go.
What the fuck did I just watch? Okay, here's their premise that says here. In the future, water has disappeared from the Earth, so it's basically Tank Girl in a way, and a group of teenagers who live in an orphanage run by the despotic rulers of the new Earth find an orb of special power. They escape from the orphanage and try to cross the wasteland looking for a place they can live free, even as the stormtroopers search for them in the orb. Stormtroopers. This movie is a friggin' mess, man. This is a sloppy mess that's trying so hard to be like Star Wars and like also a little bit of Mad Max and just fails on every single level. Like Mel Brooks was one of the producers of this movie. This is his company, Brooks Films, who at the same year had a bigger success with The Fly. And this movie was so bad that he literally considered was ready to jump off a roof because of how bad this was. I mean, he actually invested nearly over $500,000 of his own money. He had to raise an additional $15 million, and so he had no. It's like he made this movie having no idea if it could be saved at all. He cut like a 10-minute trailer and tried to sell it to many studios, including Michael Eisner at Paramount when he was there, Jeffrey Katzenberg at Disney. He said no. MGM then eventually picked the film up, and he lost about $9 million of his own money making this movie, but he did say eventually over time the film did go on to break even, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, this movie felt like it was such a train wreck for Mel Brooks overall, but hey, in the end, he had a bigger sci-fi hit with MGM later on the following year with Spaceballs, which went on to become more of a classic overall, but this film's a fucking mess, man. This thing's all over the place. The premise makes no sense whatsoever. The characters are lackluster. It's a really bizarre movie, and not in a good kind of bizarre. A good kind of bizarre that makes you go like, what the fuck were you guys thinking when you greenlit this? Speaking of that, here's another one of these movies that should be something good, but yeah, I don't know what this movie was trying to be. Nutcracker, the motion picture.
Ever since there has been Christmas, there have been Christmas stories to delight the child in all of us. Some have been cherished from generation to generation. One will live forever.
And then there are some stories that studios have no idea how to make a good adaptation of, so why do we even bother trying? Case in point, The Nutcracker. We've talked about so many bad Nutcracker movies over the course of the time about the movie show. We haven't even gotten to all the bad ones yet. We still have to get to the Four Realms one in 2018. But we did cover The Nutcracker, The Untold Story, which there's a reason why that story was never told. And it says a lot when the best one we've taken a look at of all things was Care Bears, The Nutcracker, which is not a good sign if the Care Bears is beating out every single other adaptation of this story. Case in point with this version here. This colorful holiday classic is finally brought to the big screen. Designed by famous child story author and artist Maurice Sendak, of course, of Where the Wild Things Are and Little Bear, and written for the first time to be close as possible to the original story, a lavish, exciting, and heartwarming celebration of dance, of music, and of life, based upon the Pacific Northwest Ballet's original production. I'm sorry, there was another Nutcracker version that was much better than any of the big screen ones. Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry. Like, if Tom and Jerry and the Care Bears are giving you the best versions of the Nutcracker than a major Hollywood studio with the budgets that they have, there's clearly a problem here. And to this one's credit, this one isn't the worst, but it's still pretty bad. I'll give it this. It looks better than the other versions we've taken a look at. It's the one that comes the closest to probably being as close to an adaptation of the Nutcracker that we've seen that works. Of course, another one would be the 93 Nutcracker, which this one's very similar to. The biggest problem with this is that the cinematography overall is very sloppy. The sloppiness of the cinematography, and nothing about this movie really screams out, has to be seen on a big screen. This literally could have been something that you could have seen on Broadway or on a theater play during the holiday season, but this movie gets so ridiculously over the top and insane that, like, I want to give it the best credit of all, because it's the one that's at least trying to do something unique and different, and it's just failing miserably at it, just like the other versions of it. It can't stick the landing, and it really, really suffers from it. It's a really bad shame, because this one came the closest to finally getting it right, and yet they still couldn't get it right. So, yeah, not much more to say about that one. That is Nutcracker, the motion picture. Just, if I gotta say the Care Bears and Tom and Jerry are the better ones to watch, you can tell that this story is never meant to be given a proper film adaptation that's actually going to be good. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last film that we have here. Harrison Ford and Peter Weir reuniting for the first time since their success with Witness the previous year, The Mosquito Coast.
Rex Reed calls The Mosquito Coast one of the most important films of the year. Judith Krisk says Harrison Ford is extraordinary. Pia Lindstrom of NBC TV calls it a tour de force for Harrison Ford, guaranteed to win him an Academy Award nomination. And Richard Friedman of Newhouse Newspaper says it's a blistering adventure movie. The Mosquito Coast, rated PG.
Now playing. Check newspapers for listings.
Yeah, definitely a very odd movie compared to the last thing that these two did. This one in particular, interesting premise. You have a story of a family that leaves the United States and tries to find a happier and simpler life in the jungles of Central America. However, their jungle paradise quickly turns into a dystopia as their stubborn father, played by Harrison Ford, and his behavior become increasingly erratic and aggressive. So imagine the movie Roar, where the guy decides to take his family out to this place where it brings all these lions in here, and they try to work together as a family. When, if you see the movie, it's nothing like that. Yeah, imagine that, except there's no lions, but the family is basically in complete disarray, and you have somebody that just doesn't get the hint that his family does not like this and really want to go ahead and strangle him in the middle of the night to end this suffering. Oh, and this is written by our good friend Paul Schrader. It's back when Paul Schrader still was sane and not going off on Facebook talking about how Roger Corman pissed him off when he died, But yeah, this one is definitely less appealing than his movie Witness. It's a movie where it's a very polarizing film, because it's a movie where the premise could easily be ending if the main character had a brain that actually saw what his family was doing during the whole thing, and basically coming to the realization that maybe I should think about quitting this whole thing. And it never happens with this guy. He's just so committed to this, and the saying is, live your dreams, go out, no matter how hard you try, go out and live your dreams and just do it. But there's a time and a place for that, and this is definitely not that time. Like, this whole movie becomes uncomfortable because this whole thing could have easily been wrapped up in a matter of moments when if the father realizes how miserable his family is. But no, it keeps going for nearly an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours, I should say, and it feels like, it's just not really worth it in the end. It's just a movie where, it really doesn't feel like you feel excited for anybody involved in here. And the movie just feels like a jumbled mess overall, wasting a lot of really good talent in here. Helen Mirren, River Phoenix, Andre Gregory, Martha Plimpton. Jason Alexander has an early film role here. One of the original stars of Gone with the Wind, Butterfly McQueen, actually had one of her last film roles in this. I think this was actually her last film role. But this was a movie that I feel like they made it simply because, you know, Witness was such a big hit. And they had this other movie. They said, hey, let's go ahead and do this one. And hopefully we can find a similar success with this. And it's just not there with this film. It's a movie that's kind of boring. You don't like anybody in here. Harrison Ford's doing the best he can with the material given to him. But even by the end of it, you're just kind of like, why should I get behind this guy? This guy's kind of a dick. I mean, I don't know. That's just a mixed opinion on the Mosquito Coast, but I'm not a fan of it. And with that said, we wrap up another time about the movie's Flashback. Next time we meet, we take a look at 5 more movies. The movie before Thanksgiving that year, we have Steven Spielberg and Don Bluth's An American Tail. Universal coming in to try to take down Disney, and pretty much succeeding overall. But Disney has a re-release up their slate to go up against American Tail. The re-release of Song of the South. You know, that Disney movie that everyone is very iffy on whether or not they want to see that movie, and I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's something that should be seen, but I'll touch more on that on the next episode. We got Firewalker, we've got Charlie Sheen in The Wraith, and we also have Defense of the Realm. So 5 films to take a look at next time around. We'll take a look at them coming up next week on the show. With all that said, thank you so much for watching this. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do me the honor of going ahead and hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification button. Check out the last episode we did. Check out our playlist. And with all that said, I will see you guys next time. Until then, see you next time. Take care.